Hello and welcome to another edition of the Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy LegacyCast. I'm Jim Stark, the Executive Director. We do these LegacyCasts on a regular basis to help bring context to what's going on in the sports world today and give it some history as we talk with our esteemed guests. And today I'm joined by a very esteemed guest, the former head coach of the Detroit Pistons, former Pistons all-time great, and Michigan Sports Hall of Famer, Ray Scott. Well, Ray Scott, welcome to our first Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy LegacyCast. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad you could get that out, and I like the esteemed
I didn't mess
part.
it up. Did you see that? I didn't mess it up. And I have before, but welcome.
Thank you, my friend.
There's nobody that's more steeped in the sports legacy of the state of Michigan in your 40, almost 50 years now, right?
Well,
almost 60 years.
Let's not keep counting.
Yeah, since you first came to Detroit in 1961.
That's right. That's
right. And you're a sports fan.
Absolutely.
Not just a basketball fan.
No, I like you said, when you're steeped in the Philadelphia tradition of sports, and you begin with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Phillies and so forth, and then when you have sports teams, you become aware of other sports teams around the nation. So I certainly have been aware of what transpired in Detroit. Pre-Pistons, but pro-Lions, pro-Red Wings when there were only, 6?
Yeah, the original six.
Yeah, the original six teams.
Sure.
So I knew about the hockey back then and baseball, of course, with the Phillies and Philadelphia Athletics that played here in Detroit. But the big thing, and one of the loves that I had about the Motor City, even from those days, was my love of the sport of boxing.
Yeah, and you couldn't have picked a better sport to be tied to Detroit than boxing, with the legacy of Joe Louis and then later on, of course, Thomas Hearns.
And the great Sugar Ray Robinson.
And there's a great Sugar Ray Robinson.
Although he became Harlem's own, he began here in Detroit.
He was never really connected to Detroit, though, like Joe Louis or Thomas Hearns was.
No, not at all.
But he was from here originally.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
But what are your memories of the Brown Bomber? I understand that, especially for an African-American person, he was more like not a god, but a leader than just a boxer. Is that fair to say?
Well, the Bomber was international, because of his famous fights with, Max Schmeling.
Max Schmeling.
That really, he became an international figure in the fighters that he defeated. But he was also, there was that spiritual thing about Joe where he was a big part of the community. So the community of Detroit always claimed that. I mean, he was a golfer and he
wonderful
was
sportsman,
just a person with a big heart. And I just think probably one of the most phenomenal boxer community people of his time. And we've been thinking about it. The only guy that probably supplanted him in that regard is Muhammad Ali.
Yes, and I know from your discussions earlier that Muhammad Ali became a part of your life.
Yeah, well, he's a part of everybody's life.
But you more so than most.
But personally, I did have an acquaintance with him. We became friends. I had teammates of mine meet him, and they couldn't even believe that I knew him, that kind of thing. He knew my family. He was just one of the great people in terms of what he brought to you. And you think about this. Here's a guy that's a superstar that could make you feel like you were special.
And a long-time Michigan resident. He lived out in Berrien Springs.
That's right.
For the last 25. Did you ever understand why he lived out there? What brought him to Michigan?
I don't know if it was because he was close to Chicago and it was a beautiful property.
I know it was a beautiful area.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. But, the champ in time was really a Chicago guy, too. So I'm thinking that was part of it in terms of his investment. But he did move back to Louisville and then eventually to Arizona.
And like you say, he kind of belonged to everybody.
He belonged to everybody.
But more to our area here, Thomas Hearns, how did he impact boxing in the later years?
I don't think Tommy was as international. But he was a great talent.
But I'll tell you what, I'm not a boxing expert like you, Ray, but the first round of Hagler-Hearns 1 may have been the best single round of boxing you ever want to pick.
Lives with us to this day, absolutely. And although Tommy was on the wrong side of that.
Right. He could have been. He could have been.
And he could have been on the right side very easily.
Yep.
I agree that Tommy is probably one of the greatest boxers with a brand in American history because of Kronk. I believe that the Kronk brand is here forever, particularly historically. And Tommy's responsible for that. Wearing that Kronk on his shorts, everybody remembers
and he became a star in the era where media was so much more prevalent.
That's right.
Muhammad Ali kind of bridged it a little bit.
Right.
Joe Louis was really before.
Right.
Most of Joe Louis was newsreels.
That's right.
But Muhammad Ali was more the beginning of TV.
That's right.
But Thomas Hearns was TV.
He was TV.
Multimedia, the whole bit.
He was TV personified, and he had the skills to pull it off because the skill set at that time. And think of this, Tommy fought with other Hall of Fame fighters. When you're talking about Duran and Leonard and Hagler, I mean, this kid, it wasn't a day at the beach.
No, that may have been the greatest era for one division of great boxers, all one time.
Right. And in the history of boxing, one of the greatest eras, period.
Right.
So, Tommy really stands tall for what he accomplished and still to this day remains a strong community figure for metropolitan Detroit.
Well, as you're looking back over your X number of years in the city, I won't mention it again, who are some of the other athletes in the other sports that you remember as being very impactful?
Well,
either younger or even in your later years.
Yeah, I think, in my later years, of course, my teammate and the gentleman I coached, Dave Bing, who was the mayor, mover, shaker, leader of the city of Detroit. He's huge. Al Kaline and Mickey, I'll never forget. They're good friends. And I want to send a shout out to a guy that I really revered, loved, and admired from a distance, and that's Bill Freehand. Bill Freehand was really special for this city also, and I don't want to forget him. There's also I'm sorry.
And of course, Bill Freehand is, unfortunately, in the later stages of Alzheimer's.
Right.
And I'll tell you, Ray, I appreciate that because he came from Royal Oak, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
So Bill Freehand was, for us growing up, the ultimate, because he came from the same town.
Yeah.
So I certainly, and Bill Freehand may have been the consummate working man as far as giving you effort. He wasn't flashy, but boy, was he good.
Well, and he had that football mentality.
He personified what the city was about.
Yeah, he became statewide, out of the metropolitan Detroit area, but he was a statewide name. But Freehand was just, I don't know, he was a gentleman, but he was an athlete. He was a consummate athlete. Someone that I just, like I said, that group, that 68 team, they were very special to me. The Gator was special to me.
Willie Horton.
Willie Horton, special people. And my guy, Storm and Norman. Because when I came here in 1961, Storm and Norman was the rage. K-Line was the player, but Storm and Norman was the rage. And of course, my good friend Denny McClain, he's still my friend.
That's a smaller club now, though, Ray.
That's okay. One thing I've always believed in, my mama taught me, you stay with those who stayed with you. Denny stayed with me in the worst of times when I was going through difficult times, and I'll stick with him. So.
Well, Ray Scott, it's been wonderful recalling your time in Detroit and some of the great athletes that made up part of your history. We're going to get you back, though. We're going to talk some Pistons history, if that's okay with you, because that's really what you're best known for, is you're a Piston elder now. Is that good?
That's good.
Elder?
That's
all
good.
Right.
That's
well,
good.
Thanks for joining us on today's Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy LegacyCast, featuring my great friend and legendary Piston Ray Scott. You can visit our website at MSLC.org and view our other Legacy Casts. We'll see you next time on our next Michigan Sports Legacy Conservancy LegacyCast.